What's going on, everyone? We're back and we got a spear greatsword approach here for you guys this time around. It's a build that I've been utilizing for a couple of seasons now, with a couple of variations depending on the season, depending on the buffs, the nerfs that's coming across. Even between the season itself, there was one recently with the heavy to medium, of course, and that's going to affect it. But we have a build here where you can play it very offensively as well as defensively, depending on what you want to go for. And of course, it's going to be utilizing my primary weapons, the spear. I love it, and it's still got an amazing spot in these wars and OPRs and arenas and duels. It's just a great overall weapon with a ton of damage, gap close, adaptability. At the moment, it's probably the best weapon when it comes to melee decks. We're going to be talking about it once again. Alright, so let's talk about the abilities itself, and we're going to start off with the Greatsword. And as you guys already know, this is going to be the heavy serenity approach, which means we're going to be focusing on doing damage. You can obviously play this build on medium as well. However, you're going to be a lot squishier, and you have a couple of folds where you could essentially get one-shotted, assuming you're in onslaught stance and you have your guard down. But let's talk about this one first, and as you can see, we are going for Relentless, Skyward, and Steadfast. Now, why didn't we go for Crosscut? Well, it's because we're not primarily using this weapon. The spear is still the primary. The Greatsword is just going to be giving us other additions to play very offensively. We still have the Steadfast here to go into defensive stance. We want to get that fortified, that defensive stance up to negate some damage, which is 15%. But it also gives you stamina. For every hit you get 20 stamina back, and on top of that it does thrust damage, which goes really nice with your thrust damage ring, and of course it gives you CDR. Now obviously with this kind of build we're gonna have some staggers, which comes from the Skyward Slash, the Steadfast. We also have the slow coming from the Relentless Rush, and root on the last point, which is called Adaptive Rush. Now, there's a couple of other things as well. You got some disease coming from the Skyward, you got some rend as well. But all in all, this is just going to be a weapon that's going to allow you to gap close. It's going to allow you to get out of trouble at times. It's going to interrupt heals or just stagger them in crucial moments. But if you want to do slash damage, let's just assume the enemy has a ton of thrust protection. You can notice it when you're hitting them with the spear. You switch into the Greatsword, you get that Relentless Rush, and you throw some heavy right clicks. Alright, so let's talk about the spear now to go alongside the Greatsword here. And with the spear, there's multiple ways you can actually build this, okay? But I'm going to show you the one I'm currently using, or at least the two that I'm currently using with the Greatsword heavy builds. And this is going to be the primary one. We're going to have the Skewer, we're going to have the Perforate, and the Cyclone. Now, of course, we're going to be getting all of the stamina benefits here as Invigorating Crits is, leveled up. We also got Strong Conditioning here, and of course, Invigorated Combo coming from the Cyclone. So, already a ton of stamina coming from your skill tree here on the Spear, as well as the Greatsword, as you heard about the Steadfast before. But you have some ability. You have the Relentless Rush to combo with the Skewer. You also have the slow to gap close them, and a lot of tracking slash damage coming from the Perforates. Now, of course, as you can see, we still are utilizing a nearing precision in case we are fighting bruises, anything with grit, we're going to decimate them. And some key perks here, Aggressive Maneuvers are one of the best perks in game in my opinion, as well alongside Evasive Maneuvers, which is another amazing stamina value perk, which actually got shadow buffed. It used to be only back dodges before after hits, but now it's actually whenever you hit, you just successfully get stamina after dodging. A ton of debuffs here with the rends, the weakens, the slows, the bleeds. That's going to be applying Exploded Weakness, and you're going to get more uptime. Now the key thing here is whenever you go into the spear and you get those debuffs up, don't instantly weapon swap, because if you do, you're going to lose all of them and you're going to have to rework your way up. So it's obviously a matter of rotating spells, sure, but then you want to have your spear with the uptime, with the majority of the left clicks coming from the spear, because you have amazing tracking and a lot of uptime when it comes to the abilities itself. And the other way you could go about it is something that I've been using lately, but not necessarily that popular. It's not really a trending build by any means, and it's just skipping the Skewer. A lot of people are very comfortable utilizing Skewer as a way to get closer as well as to get out of trouble, but when you do have Relentless, when you do have Skyward and Steadfast, you already have the ways of gap closing, and increasing your kill potential with sweep can make a difference on certain targets, especially light healers as well as light range DPS such as bows and fire staves. So I've been actually utilizing this build on my heavy spear greatsword. Of course, there is one perk, as you can see, that I'm going to be losing, which is the strong conditioning, which is great. It's kind of a nimble on steroids, below 50%, but nonetheless, you do get an increase, an exponential increase of kill potential on lights. As far as stats goes, there's multiple ways you can go about it. A lot of it depends on the Magnify as well, but I'll show you a couple of them with Magnify and without the Magnify, depending on your gear. First up, we have the 300 Dex, 200 Con, and everything else on Strength. This works really well with the Serenity because obviously you're going to have the ability to escape, cleanse all stuns, root crowd controls every 30 seconds. That's amazing. That's absolutely amazing. As soon as you get stunned, let's just say, you can weapon swap Relentless Rush out of trouble, you can steadfast them, get into defensive stance, or you could just Skewer out if you have Skewer on your skill tree. But you also still have a ton of damage when it comes both to the spear and the greatsword itself. The only way you can go about it if you have too much Magnify, which means if you have a lot of frigid pieces with the Serenity, with a jewelry artifact as well, then you're gonna go 200, 200, 200. Now, it's not bad per se. You are definitely losing a bit of damage on your spear and some key perks, such as the 250 Dex perk, which empowers you, as well as the 300 Dex, as I explained before, cleansing all stun, root crowd control effects. But it's still not a bad approach by any means, especially if you're playing Greatsword. As you can see, the Greatsword damage is going to be higher, but of course, as I mentioned prior, spear being a primary weapon, you should be, emphasizing on that. However, this is the only way you can go about it. And the final approach, and this is something I actually utilize in OPRs, and it's extremely fun. Yes, you lose the 300 Dex perk, but damage is extremely high. You can practically 3-tap players, light players specifically, in this situation here. Even just by using Relentless into a heavy is absurd. And if you can get away with it, if you're a very high skill ceiling player, most definitely utilize this build, this approach, and you're gonna have a ton of fun. Alright, so this build here is now for those who want to play a very tanky secondary weapon. A secondary weapon that's going to kind of enable them to survive in situations that they would in the previous patch by playing heavy, and nowadays perhaps they just don't have enough stamina, or maybe they don't want to play heavy, they want to play medium, but they still want to be very tanky. This is the way to go. We've actually been talking about this, and when I say we, I talk about the guys I play with, and we've been talking about how can you kind of replicate it without having the same kind of conditions. By being very self-sustainable, playing under a sacred ground with your healer and just absorbing a ton of damage coming from multiple enemies. And the only way to go about it, and this applies for every weapon, is really, Greatsword is probably the best one to go about it. Not only do they get 15% damage reduction when it comes to the defensive stance, but they also get Calamity Counter. They can essentially negate all type of range damage during Calamity Counter. It doesn't drain any stamina whatsoever, and even melee stamina alongside these other perks that reduce the stamina damage taken. You're just going to be unkillable within Calamity Counter. It's just never going to really break that stamina. And on top of that, if you run Energized Counter on the weapon itself, you're getting 50 stamina back alongside Steadfast. As I mentioned before, you're going to get 20 stamina back. You can do Calamity Counter knockdown combo into Steadfast to regain all of your stamina back as well. And you have a lot of uptime on your rune, thanks to the Jagged Counter, thanks to potentially having Attunement, which will proc another damage instance, thanks to the Rune Glass DOT, thanks to potentially Keenly Jagged as well on the weapon, and you have a ton of self-sustain. You got heals from the Calamity Counter, you got heals from the Defiance skill tree, and it's just a beautiful combination of having additional stam as well as self-sustain and damage reduction, which even if you play medium, you can kind of replicate playing it as heavy. Potentially running a little bit more than 200 con, and still having the ability of self-sustaining yourself under immense amounts of threats. But you're still going to keep the Relentless Rush here for the mobility, for the gap close, And because you shift into Relentless Rush, you're going to become energized, you're going to regain stamina, you're going to get empowerments, you're going to get haste after hitting them with an Onslaught tree ability. And there's just a ton of utility defensives when it comes to the skill tree, and I love it. It's kind of similar to the old playstyle I used to utilize in Season 2, but a little bit more defensives. For those who are interested in finding out the gear, make sure to follow the community Discord. It is in the description below. Just gotta go to the builds channel right down here. We got the Spear Greatsword for Season 4. This is your Serenity approach, playing heavy, but if you want to also play medium, you gotta scroll down a little bit here. And as you can see, we got the Spear Greatsword medium flex dex build with the defensive approach that was demonstrated in the video, and anything else that might actually be interested for you guys when it comes to heavy to medium changes or going for a different build I haven't even spoken about in the video. It is down in the builds channel on Discord. So expect a couple more videos coming forward. We're gonna have a tips and tricks when it comes down to playing Spear as a Spear main. Some things you definitely need to know to min-max in your gameplay if you are a Spear main. But other than that, we're gonna release a Spear Rapier video played medium with the finisher Rapier approach. And one more video to talk about Heavy and Medium. What is the current state for both of them? What is the best ways of utilizing Medium and Heavy, and what weapons as well? As you can see, today we spoke about Spear Greatsword, and there is ways of playing it both medium and heavy, but for now that's about it, guys. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys liked the video, make sure to like and subscribe, as it helps the algorithm a lot. And that's it for now. I'll catch you guys in the next one.